Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Moment. Today I'm going to talk about the precautionary principle and ChatGPT. There are folks who are afraid of ChatGPT, and I'll talk about these kinds of things a lot, or at least I have a considerable number of ideas that I've been meaning to get to on this. And, my attitude just generally is that, look, being a Luddite, there's a history of being a Luddite. Luddite means being afraid of new technology, wanting then the government to stop it or regulate it, because there's always, the new technology is going to totally ruin the world. It's going to suddenly lead to authoritarianism, or everything's going to fall to crap because of this new technology. Every generation is engaged in this stuff, and it's always the case that this time it's for real. And so every generation thinks that, their worries before about all those technological advancements, they're so ridiculous. But now this thing is the thing that we need to stop, right? And this is yet another case, and it's always a case of misunderstanding and exaggerating the changes and the speed of those changes. But what I wanted to focus on today is just the use of the precautionary principle. I've heard some people say, look, precautionary principle says this is a new technology, and so the burden of evidence is on those with this new technology to show that it's going to make the world better. No, that's not the right use of the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle concerns people doing coerced, mandated interventions, intervening in the case of the state. It's these state interventions. And the question is whether when the state is intervening in some novel way to do something that is otherwise progressing, then they have the burden to show that their interventions will not cause undue harm, right? So we have technology that's been developing for AI for 50 years, depending on how you want to count. Always these new things were suddenly going to put everybody out of work. These robot things were going to put everybody out of work. It's been the same chime that's been going on for 50 years. But they've instead always just got incorporated into technology, and we all have more powerful machines and technology at our disposal, distributed amongst all of us rather than just at these large companies or government. We all have supercomputers in our pockets. We all have supercomputers so powerful they make the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is about a kind of little supercomputer that has all this information. They make it look ridiculous. Right? It was ridiculously weak compared to what we all have. So the intervention here, the untested, untried intervention, is for the state to say, hey, we have to put a pause. And the reason I mentioned, there's all of these supposedly smart, bright, super intelligent people now saying, and having petitions saying, we have to stop this. We've got to stop it. We've got to at least pause it and study it, and then you know what's going to happen. They're going to regulate the heck out of it. They're going to ensure that it's limited distribution, which means the government still has it. All these big companies still have it. Our enemies, political enemies in other countries are going to still, of course, be having it and developing it. You won't have it, and I won't have it, and its growth will be stunted. The standard paradigm example of an intervention that harms things are government regulations. Right? That is the paradigm example. The precautionary principle in this case is that the burden of evidence is on those who would suppose that the government should stop or slow the development of artificial general intelligence. They have to make that case. This should also be packaged in the context that every generation, like I mentioned, is always afraid of these new technologies. There's a human propensity to say, this new technology is going to completely wreck everything, and of course it never does. These things just give each of us powers to have more control in our own house, the kinds of powers that only gigantic companies had, right? I don't want to get into these kinds of things here. But again, I just want to leave you with the point. The burden of evidence is on those wishing to stop the rest of us from having these kinds of tools at our fingerprints, and that was your Science Moment. If you haven't gotten a copy of Dr. Tim Barber and my book, Expressly Human, Decoding the Language of Motion, get it today. And if you have read it, give us a review. It came out last year when I was censored on Twitter by virtue of pressure from the federal government, and its launch was therefore crippled. Go there and give it a review, give it a rating, let it be heard.